Hey, we're back. This episode is all about Washington laws, new laws for 2025. Our last video about Idaho versus Washington got a lot of attention for good reason. So we're going to break down some of the new laws coming to you from Washington. I apologize in advance. All right, let's go. Hey guys, our team gets calls, texts, and emails every single day from people like you trying to learn more about North Idaho. So if this is your first time to the channel, hit that subscribe button, tap the notifications bell. We can keep you up to date on all of our latest content. I am joined today by Eric and Scott from our team, and we're going to break down Washington Laws 2025. Here we go. All right, let's jump in. We got lots of info today. I got my computer in case we need to look anything up. I'll be my own Jamie. And we've got a lot of information that Scott and Eric have dived into regarding Washington laws. I'm just here for comedic relief and to talk smack. So let's go. Where do we start, boys? We got a lot. What's the biggest one that hit you guys the most when you're doing your research?
Man, I think it's important to just discuss the state of the states, if you will. I mean, it's tough. We're a stone's throw away from Washington State, and I think on my side and the real estate side, I've seen the biggest influx of people coming from Washington now. I mean, after
outpacing California even, right?
Yeah, for me right now,
same.
for sure, but it's not the ones you'd think. I mean, these are people that are entrenched in the west side of Washington that raised their families there, that had very successful, lucrative careers there, and they've been there since the 80s. And they no longer can stay there. They no longer recognize the state, the good, the bad has outweighed the good, while they love it geographically and they love where they live, they can't stomach what's happening politically.
It takes an incredible amount of why to want to uproot after you've been there for that long, and you've got, a beautiful home, and it is beautiful over there, right? Yeah. Absolutely. It's visually, it's a wonderful place to live. And it takes a big why to uproot your whole family and want to move across state. And I think people are kind of hitting that limit.
Yep. And I think it's that drastic change, right? Where it's like the politicians live on the boiled frog analogy, whereas if we just turn it up a little bit, right, we're going to be all right. But when there's a drastic shift, like I know we'll get into crime rates, and we've talked about it a little bit before, but in 2013, Washington was ranked 30th in violent crime rates. And as we went over in the last one, they're ranked 3rd now. I mean, that's a significant shift in the last 10 to 12 years. And when you know that a huge portion of that is on the west side, out of Seattle and Tacoma, then you think about, the east side's probably stayed pretty close. I mean, that's a huge shift.
How does the population look at that? Maybe they don't see those stats, right, generally. But how do you look at that and say, yeah, our politicians are doing a good job. They're doing what we want them to do.
The kind of thing about blue no matter who recently, like anybody who's against Trump, if their politician's against Trump, I feel like they're like, yep, they're doing great. Yeah. I mean, recently with all these protests and stuff like that, you see a lot of people just like, oh my gosh, he's acting so presidential because he's standing against Trump and the National Guard. It's like, do you not understand what's going on in your own backyard and the issues you're seeing? I mean, you have Chaz in Seattle.
Oh, that drove me nuts, dude, when that was going on.
And I have a client that it was just there 2 weeks ago for a Christian thing at the state capitol, and they got raided and bombarded by anti-Christianity people and stuff like that. And he's like, what's going on? Where's the cops? And the cops we can't do anything.
They're not allowed to. And you're 100% right. And I think it's virtue signaling. It's selling virtuousness and then reshaping what that actually means. Yeah. It's convincing people that they're morally righteous or higher than somebody else. So even if it looks like total shit, they cloud it around, well, we're doing the right thing. And it's the right thing.
We're being inclusive of everyone.
We're woke.
Yeah.
And woke is right. I mean, that was the sales pitch for a really, really long time. So it's unfortunate. It's hard to talk on growing up in Spokane and wanting to be proud of where I grew up. It's tough to see what's happened to Washington. And when you're showing somebody a house out here that's lived on the west side for 35, 40 years, and they're worried about the back door having glass next to it, you really see what it's like to live there. And these are nice neighborhoods they're moving from, and saying, yeah, but I don't want a window next to my back door. Somebody can break in and easily access and get into my house. So you want to talk about our home invasion robbery rates in Idaho? that doesn't happen. Everybody that would do that in Idaho knows there's a dude that's been daydreaming about this moment for the last 10 to 12 years.
I've been waiting.
Yeah.
Polishing.
Oh, thank God.
Yes. Polishing his Gen 12 just for this moment.
Got a flashbang by the bed. Ready to rock, dude.
Not quite like that, but they know, it's the old Japanese adage from World War II. There's a gun behind every blade of grass. In Idaho, there's probably 3 or 4, but so it just doesn't happen there. But I feel bad for those folks. I really do.
It's almost like they have some post-traumatic stress, right? They come over here and they don't even know. You meet for coffee. I've had this happen dozens of times. And you're sitting down in a coffee shop, and inevitably we talk about politics, and they're like hushed voices. And I'm like, it's okay. You can talk freely here. Nobody's going to jump you. All the people in this coffee shop, I guarantee, have the same sentiments about what you're saying, and they'd probably get along really good. So, but it's that same thing, dude. It's that post-traumatic stress of like being under the thumb of some government entity that their values don't match.
Yes. And reshaping what you're supposed to anticipate and accept as the new normal.
Yeah.
When they're talking about watching people check their door handles frequently on their house and their car while they're inside of it, and then they get told by society that, well, these people they're victims, and they have a disease.
Let it have it.
Yeah.
You can just leave it open.
Just leave it open, so they can take whatever they want.
It's just stuff.
It's better than getting your nose broke. That's insane, dude.
Yes.
That wouldn't last 2 seconds in Idaho.
No, and we're not up here touting that Idaho is perfect, but that sort of behavior is not acceptable here because there's a recognition that it leads to far more violent ones, which I think you can go back. Again, 2013, they were ranked 30th. Now they're 3rd. And when you look at serious crime statistics, it's even worse.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in a minute. But
yeah. All right. Hit me with some. What do you got, Scott? What's your number one thing you're thinking about over there?
So, when I was doing a lot of research the last few days, I think the biggest thing was of how many laws were signed in Washington recently in this fiscal year.
Well, that's good, right? Laws make us safer.
550 in Washington versus 70 in Idaho.
550.
Yeah. And a lot of them were like addendums and amendments to previous laws, which, I kind of went through down the rabbit hole last night and kind of understood a lot of them. But I think the biggest one that honestly shocked me was the Bill 1296, the removal of parental rights with kids in schools.
That's when things get real scary.
Yeah. And there was a lot of like stuff all over Instagram and stuff like that, like kind of scaring people into stuff. But when you actually read it, it is pretty terrifying. I mean, it eliminates the rights to receive prior notification when medical services are being offered to their child, except when there's a medical emergency is required.
So you could have a teacher that is grooming, for lack of a better word, your child and convincing them that maybe they belong in a different body or whatever. I'm not going to use too many words because I don't want to get censored on YouTube, but you know where I'm going with that. And that person could be secretly doing that for years and you have no idea, and they're not obligated to tell you.
The school isn't obligated, and they can't tell you. Also,
is there an age limit on that?
I didn't see anything age limit. I think it was K through 12.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, sky's the limit with these guys. And then they can't receive notification when the school's arranged or directly or indirectly for medical treatment that results in follow-up care beyond normal school hours. So they can just make appointments for your kids
during school and not tell you. I
don't understand, like, well, then how are they getting to these appointments? Like, who's taking them?
Right.
Is a school bus coming to pick them up and go into a group therapy here about affirming care or something like that?
As a parent, that's a hard no for me. I'd be out, like, no.
Yeah. Well, not even as a parent. I mean, we're going to get into the ways in which they've gotten creative with increasing their tax revenue, which they're using their citizens as a resource to be exploited, which will always piss me off when you start feeling like, oh yeah, here's more, go ahead and take more of my money that I've already been taxed on by the feds. Please, state, take more. But when you talk about schools making those leaps, and then you see that they passed a bill for property tax increase, 55% increase of local school district property tax levy authority. So they've increased that authority per area to go secure a levy from their citizens up 55%. they've increased that. And this is what they're pushing.
Well, it's funny. They framed it as, and this is the title of it, the top priority of our schools should be to ensure a safe learning environment where every student has the chance to thrive. Every parent would be like, yes.
That seems very reasonable, right?
And then you scroll down, 2 paragraphs, and you're like, good God, they're just putting lipstick on a pig here and trying to sell it.
That is diabolical.
It's scarier when they start using words like emergency. Right? Because who defines that? If you go in and you find the definition of emergency, that is extremely broad. Mm-hmm. So they don't have to inform parents if they can declare that there's an emergency, if it's like a mental health thing or whatever.
Yeah, say they have anxiety or like a panic attack. Right. Like that's an emergency.
And that someone out there is going to go, oh, you have anxiety? Why do you have anxiety? Is it because you might feel like you should be in a different body or whatever, man? Like, that's insane to me as a parent. I would pull my kids out of public school immediately.
I think that's the biggest push of why, like, where your kids go, like why there's a huge push in private schools, because they don't have to follow these laws.
Right.
That's one thing why we're looking into is because I don't have to worry about, even in Idaho, I don't have to worry about Boise trying to change something that affects up here.
Yeah.
Weird when there's competition, all of a sudden things start coming back to normal.
Yep.
Right? Where you start in public school, this underlying just outright commitment to public school education is wild to me anyways. The same folks that are coming over here have a couple different groups, but adult age children that they paid to send to a 4-year college. I'm going to go nuts on college anyways, on the institution of 4-year colleges. But they pay good money. It's expensive to send them to these 4-year colleges just to completely lose their kids. They don't even talk to them anymore because they found out they voted for somebody else. They go to college and get completely indoctrinated. What are you paying for? Show me the numbers that say if you go to a 4-year college in today's society, you're going to get a higher paying job. There's exceptions, of course, if you're a structural engineer, if you're a doctor, if you're a surgeon, a lawyer, God forbid. If you're a lawyer or something, those require that 4-year institution of higher learning. But the rest, you show me on paper where it returns that investment. You're paying money to get your kids completely indoctrinated.
Oh, yeah.
Now they're pushing it into public schools at a lower level.
Well, I think there's a huge push to get kids not to go to colleges, like with the trades and stuff like that. I think that's why they're losing a lot of attendees and stuff to college campuses. And they're like, well, let's get them when they're lower, when they have to go.
I mean, it's a good example of us voting with our dollars, I guess, right? We're not going to send, the public school thing's a little different, but with colleges, we're not going to send our kids there. I'm certainly not pushing my kids. My son doesn't want to go to college, but my daughter is on the fence, so we've had a lot of conversations about that. And I'm not paying my kid to go get a degree in communications and
English studies.
Yeah. Underwater basket weaving like me. And now come out of this 4 year, and I've had the same thing. I had a client recently that their 2 kids, they don't get along. Yeah. And I'm like, man, that would be a bummer.
Yeah. Your family's separated just because of education.
Because they were just beat into their head over 4 years. Some nonsense.
And it didn't used to be that way.
No.
I relied on schools. Maybe I just had my perception was off, but I remember going to school where they used to teach you coping mechanisms, right? That was a part of it. And maybe the school intended to, maybe they didn't, but bullies have been a part of our society since humans have been humans.
I hate to say it.
Yes.
I hate bullies, but there's some value in having a threat.
Yes.
Right? It's the same thing, man. When I when I went to the police academy, right? The threat was the staff office. You step out of line, they beat your ass back into line. Like I said, I don't like bullies, but having a threat out there, if I show up dressed like a cat, people aren't going to just agree with me and let me live in my delusional moment. There's some dude out there who's going to be like, yo, dumbass, you're not a cat.
Yeah.
People need to hear that. I'm not advocating violence. I'm saying,
I had a child get in trouble for meowing at a cat at school.
That's hilarious.
And I don't have any problem. If you want to go to school dressed as a cat, I'm down. You just accept the consequences of what other teenage kids are going to do.
Yes.
That's just part of the deal. And that's where I think bullies have a valuable place in society. I don't like them either. I don't like them, but it teaches kids a little bit of resilience. You either learn to stand up for yourself and not be a soft target, or you learn not to let words bug you as much, which our society desperately needs. I mean, one of the highest suicide rates amongst kids right now, I think, is a general lack of resilience and a lack of teaching coping mechanisms, whether it's at home, at school. And that's one of the reasons I love sports. Yeah. It's highs and lows and all that stuff, but it's tough, man.
Yeah, I was so happy because the other day we were at some event where they actually handed out trophies, and my wife was like, "Oh, thank God they do that again here."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I never had to think about that because, like, if you sucked at baseball, you just didn't get a trophy.
You didn't get shit.
Yeah.
And it sucked, and then you tried harder, and we can go hours on that one. But
so they weren't participation trophies; they were actually for performance.
Yeah, and then at jiu-jitsu too, when the kids go to jiu-jitsu, they were like, well, they do tickets at the end of the day, and if you suck, you don't get a ticket. And I'm sorry.
That's motivating.
Exactly.
Right. Yes. Equal opportunity, not equal outcome.
And that's what I teach the kids. It's like, well, if they didn't get why do you think they didn't get a ticket?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, they were bad. Well, glad you got 4. Or, or why didn't you get 4 this time? Why'd you only get 2? It's like, it teaches their own society without me having to do it of what to be a better person is.
It's a great feedback mechanism. Okay, so that law is passed?
Yeah, that got signed in Bill 1296.
That's awesome. I'll jump in for the next one because it's related to medical as well. Let me pull it up on my computer.
Oh, yes.
House Bill 1531 is passed. The tricky wording requires public health responses to communicable diseases to be guided by the best available science. We all know about trusting the science. So this bill is meant to address a situation in other states where local health departments were prohibited from sharing quality information with the public. I don't know if that happened. Basically, okay, so here's the opposition to it. This bill is redundant, vague, unpopular, and would only increase the public's distrust in the public health system. It's an example of government overreach and is a human rights violation of epic proportions. The bill centralizes control at the state level by stripping local officials of their autonomy and will lead to a totalitarian government. And that's strong wording. Wow. Okay, so basically it opens the opportunity for an undemocratic power grab that will give unelected, easily bought, and cherry-picked scientists the ability to dictate the measures that go against the will of the people. Any science that does not fit the political agenda will be censored, and people who resist will be punished. So that's the opposition, right? Yeah, and obviously, that's pretty strongly worded. But the point is, it sounds like just more government overreach and how they can tell us to, what to do with our bodies. And I don't like the idea of that at all. That should scare the crap out of people.
It goes back to what we said before when they declare an emergency.
Backed by science.
Yes.
Right?
Everybody trusted that whoever that main guy, the face of COVID, everybody, every mainstream, every blue state and the federal government said, trust this guy. He's the expert. What have we found out since? Right? That's the scary part. That the state can just get together and declare an emergency. And then all of a sudden, there was talks about internment camps.
Yeah,
in Washington. For the unvaccinated.
So this bill tells me that is a possibility. If they say, hey, this is backed by science, we can force you to take the jab, whatever it is at that time, and maybe we can force you into internment camps. I don't know. It opens a lot of doors.
Or they can just do it as a vaccine schedule.
Yep. Oh, even worse, right?
Like,
this is for the good of all. We're going to make you take this.
I wonder how much influence Gates has because he's in Washington.
A lot.
Since he's got all the pharmaceutical companies and stuff, I just wonder how much stuff is just backed by.
Right. Yeah. What if they say, hey, this is science. We're going to force every kid in school to add one more to the list of the ones they're already getting, and here's the science that we found to show that this is good, and we need to add this to make sure you don't get bird flu or whatever thing coming down the pipeline. Who knows what it is?
But I'll never trust the science again.
I think that's the issue, right? Why would we?
You're not trusting the science. You're trusting by the time it actually gets to us, I truly believe that the belt-fed mainstream media, by the time any of that information has come to us, it's been so screened and twisted and, completely refocused that I can't trust anything that we actually get at the end product. I just don't think any of it's raw.
There's too much money involved. Right. And that's the problem.
I've always looked at Switzerland and Italy. Those are the two countries I always look at, and sometimes Sweden too. whenever all this COVID stuff was going on, I was looking at what they were sending out to their population,
right,
and kind of piggybacking off of that. And I was like, okay, because they're not bought and paid for, no FDA over there, and they allow a lot of cooler, I guess, stuff for their own citizens to utilize, i.e. like stem cells. What else was a big thing? Oh, I'm a fan of like the right to die in your own home or something like that.
Yeah, euthanasia.
Yeah. That kind of stuff. Like I was like, okay, they can get on a humanitarian level. And so I just kind of watched what they were doing. And I think that, what is that, the show, like the Blue Zones, where people like on average lived over 100 and why they did. Kind of looked at those societies of what they were doing, and they're the most healthy, so for a reason.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's who to follow. Let's jump into taxes before we get banned entirely.
Oh boy.
Yeah, everybody loves talking about taxes. Hey, we should add, we are not tax professionals. We're not doctors. We actually sell real estate for a living. So yeah, keep that in mind. This is just information.
I'd say we're also super passionate about building and maintaining quality communities.
That's like really what we do.
Well, truly, I have a vested interest. My kids are growing up here, but it's not just mine, it's everybody else's.
Yeah.
And I love seeing the products that are generated from small town USA, and we still have some of that here. And this isn't intended just to bag on Washington. It's easiest because they're our neighbors, and it's so odd that Washington is so diametrically in opposition to Idaho, and we're right next to each other. But it's hard not to.
Well, I feel like we have an obligation to preserve freedom and democracy everywhere in the U.S.
Right.
And you know, we have a tiny soapbox to stand on to talk about it. So I think that's why we take that opportunity. Yeah, we have incredible freedoms in Idaho, and we want to keep them that way.
Right.
So it's important to use case studies like other states near us and kind of examine what went wrong so that we can keep the same thing from happening here.
Yeah, Washington's a great one. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a state that had everything.
Yeah.
Major port. So you're talking about imports and exports, and you have Boeing and you have Microsoft, huge Amazon. I mean, huge companies, you know, global companies. You really have everything at your disposal. And it's absolutely beautiful if you love the mountains.
And when you look at the crime rates from 10 years ago, it wasn't that long ago that things switched.
Yes.
What you started out with. That's incredible.
2013, they were ranked 30th, and now they're ranked 3rd. So you ask yourself why. And again, we're not tax experts, but I think it's important to analyze what the burden is on the citizens.
Yep.
So where's Idaho rank?
On what?
When our tax, the ones we went over before.
Number 11.
Okay, so we're 11. So Idaho didn't make top 10 as far as individual tax burden. The highest rate, the one that really killed their score, they were like 35th in unemployment insurance for taxes, which makes me believe it has to do with population because it's more of a one-to-one and it's not shared by a larger collective, which would make some sense to me. Where was Washington?
45 overall.
They're ranked 45 out of 50 as far as individual tax burden, and when you analyze that along with what their crime rate is, what are you getting out of your incredible tax burden?
Right. In theory, taxes should go to pay for public services.
Yeah.
Schools, police departments, fire departments.
Roads.
Roads.
Right.
But clearly that's not how. I don't. Maybe Washington has really good roads. I'm not sure.
No,
they're terrible.
That's why they just up their gas
So it's
tax.
not going there.
Yeah, their gas checks.
So where's the money go?
I can tell you where it's not going. It's not going towards actually thwarting crime. And I would even suggest that some of their numbers, I know for a fact that Spokane did it with a previous police chief, where they would doctor their crime statistics, where they'd take a home invasion burglary, an occupied dwelling burglary, and they'd change that to a criminal trespass. So it wasn't a hard felony. And I know other states do that too, but man, I've got some here from the FBI. Super trustworthy, but this actually came from the
new FBI.
The
new FBI.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But from 2019 to 2023, that's the most recent that I have. The national murder rate, and that was during the vid, which was pretty crazy in general. But murder rate in the United States went up 17.2%. What do you want to guess it went up in Washington during that same time?
Oh boy, more.
87.4.
87.
Nearly doubled the national average in 4 years.
Wow.
And in Washington, it's also interesting to note that you charging somebody at a state level for drug-induced homicide, which Idaho has, so if you're a fentanyl dealer and killing people that way, they don't consider that to be a murder or homicide. So while those statistics are extremely high, you're talking about person-to-person murder rate went up 87.4%. Let's see, aggravated assault during that time in Washington went up 31.5. It's wild. Vehicle theft and larceny during that time, so theft, went down in Washington, allegedly, by 8.2%. And this goes back to my point. There's absolutely no way that's accurate. They just changed what they criminalized. They just moved the statistics, because vehicle thefts went up 117% in 4 years.
That is completely insane. And it is not the fault of, Eric and I are both former cops, right? It is not the fault of law enforcement. There are legions of cops over there that are ready and willing to do the job, but they are not allowed to because of the administration. So that it's not their fault, right? Yeah, right. They would willingly do it, but now they're working in an environment where they're worried about getting sued all the time for doing anything, and it hamstrings them. They're unable to do the job,
and the justice system just boots them right back out. So why are they going to go risk their life to apprehend this fugitive that the courts aren't going to prosecute anyways, and they're just going to
sucks.
I mean, it's a rough deal. It's a raw deal over there right now, and I commend those brothers and sisters in blue that are fighting that good fight, standing on the line. But it's tough. And then you watch your police chief of Seattle over the last couple of days with the protests and riots downtown, and saying we don't need any federal assistance or anything like that. It's mostly peaceful, and they're burning cars. Come on.
Yeah. How the guys that are working their fucking 5th straight day of 16 hours of overtime, how do they feel about not having help? I bet they'd want it.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yep.
I can't imagine working for a leader like that. Well, actually, I can, because when I was a riot cop in California, Governor Newsom was in charge of our department and told us what to do. So technically we were, and it sucks. You're out there and you see what's going on in the street. You see the reality of it, and then you're getting orders from up top, counterintuitive to what makes sense.
It's brutal.
It's insane.
That's why I wanted to look up those tax statistics. What are the first step of any 12-step program, Washington, is to admit that you have a problem, right? Like, there's your intervention. Hey, we're failing here, and when was that? When we were talking about George Floyd and they were talking about defunding police 10 years ago now, maybe? 8 to 10?
No, George Floyd was 2019.
Yeah, it was right in the beginning of COVID.
2020.
Right?
Yeah. 2020.
So weird. We're looking at 2019 statistics. When all of that stuff started happening, and you had Minnesota and Seattle and a lot of those places talking about defunding police and going back to this, we're going to decriminalize a lot of criminal behaviors. I felt like I sat back and said, I have a pretty good idea how this is going to go.
Yeah.
I have a pretty good idea how these crime rates are going to go up in these cities, but maybe not. Maybe if you create this perfect utopia, everybody will just be decent to each other. You let people smoke meth, you let them do open air fentanyl, maybe it'll be fine. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe this is just my inaccuracy. Well, proof's in the pudding. That was a terrible idea.
Yep.
And when you put civilians in charge of things like use of force analysis on law enforcement, cops aren't even going to risk it. And I don't blame them.
No.
So you kind of get what you vote for, and it's tough.
Do you think, I don't know what it will take for the population to realize this, because it goes back to the vote blue no matter who.
Right.
I don't know.
It's emotions.
At what point do they have to be personally victimized to shift that mindset? Maybe that would do it. I don't know. But man, you got to pay attention, because cops talking here, like, that's real.
Right.
I saw it happen in California. The decriminalization, things went downhill right from that moment.
Well, like even Spokane, remember you could do pretty much anything. I don't really know the law, what was allowed to open air do anything, but even though they amended that to get rid of that, so
right,
you can't even do a lot of stuff on the street anymore, and you see a lot of less fentanyl hangs.
Yeah.
But you still see them. But
the old fence stance.
Yeah. But yeah, even they got a clue of it, of like how bad it is.
It's frustrating.
Make no mistake, our felons flee Idaho and go to Washington.
Yep.
There's a reason. The consequences over there are far less, and they've decriminalized a lot of it. Even if they don't allow for open air drug use, by the time that officer gets them to the jail and writes that report, that guy's released. I mean, OR, released owed recognizance or book and release.
What's interesting about these statistics is they decriminalized, but the percentages went up.
Yeah, that's how serious.
That's what's crazy.
That's why they're worse.
Yeah.
These are, I promise, these statistics are worse than this. Just ask anybody that lives there. They see it all the time, and now it's like they've picked downtown Seattle dry, so now it's moving out. Mm-hmm. It's going to really nice places down there, like Bellevue. Woodinville, some of those,
Linwood.
yeah, some nicer areas out there.
I would be so frustrated as a citizen knowing that my police force, not their fault, right? But my police force is just completely checked out.
Oh yeah,
But I would be pretty concerned.
and it's not even.
It's not like they're checked out, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like,
Yeah,
they're just not going to respond to certain
it's basically
calls. It's completely down.
it's apathy.
And I feel for them, man.
They just can't do anything about it, and they know it. Their policies don't back them up. Their citizens, by and large, don't back them up because they bought into the we're blue no matter what, and it's emotions, right? They believe and been belt fed the police are bad guys for so long that they actually believe it.
Yeah.
It's tough. That's a tough job in a place like that.
Yeah. Contrast that with a cop working in Idaho that the community loves. Your department backs you up. Like, holy moly.
You drive your squad cars home.
Yeah.
And not worry about getting your house firebombed.
Right.
Nope.
Yeah.
Neighbors love it.
Or the gun's jacked out of your rig when it's parked out front.
Yeah.
Like,
It's insane.
dude.
That was one wake-up call when I moved up here. I was like, what the hell are these guys doing in their driveways?
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, shit, my neighbor's PD.
Yeah.
And he takes his car home. I was like, that's really respectable.
Parks it out front. He's not worried about it. Yeah.
My buddy from California, when he came up to visit, he's a detective down there, and he's like, I wouldn't agree with that. I'm like, that's because you're living
exactly
where you are.
Exactly.
Like, it's a different mindset.
Anytime I took a car home, we didn't have take home cars, but I'd take them home occasionally in California, and it was hide it in the garage.
Right.
If I couldn't, put it somewhere it can't be seen. Take the guns out, like all the shit, man. It's a whole different world.
And how does, and that's the big trick. And when people move here, I like the ones that pay attention. How do we get there? There's a whole bunch of steps that lead up to a society where that's the norm.
Yeah.
Right? So how do we nip that as we go? And there's a lot of pissed off Washingtonians out there because this one moves so fast. But state like California, I feel like it eroded over time. And all of a sudden, the frog's boiling, right? This community is not one where I want to raise my kids. And now even further, states are going to the point where, that's okay, because we're going to raise your kids. They won't,
exactly. Yeah, don't worry. We'll take it from here.
Yeah. They won't talk to you in their 30s, right? Because they are completely bought into this spoon-fed bullshit.
I like how you put this. You put this the other day on something, Eric. You said states are vying for like citizens, right? It's a competition, and that's why we have this huge shuffling of people around, especially in the Northwest. You've got migrations of people from California, Oregon, Washington, and a few other states coming to places like Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. It's interesting. These states are, it's a competition to attract the best citizens, or at least the citizens that match the values.
You're competing for contributing members of society. And lawful ones. I mean, these folks that are coming over, the people I'm talking to, they listen to us. They're probably listening to this. These are great, productive members of society that have done great things elsewhere that are going to be active in our community here. They're not criminals. We aren't going to have to worry about them at all. What state wouldn't want those folks to be a part of it?
Yep.
And Washington's losing assets. And what are they replacing it with? I just told you, our criminals flee Idaho and go there.
Yeah.
Right?
That and illegals.
Yeah. Exactly,
right?
where they can get free shit. So it's
we work with people all the time like that will move from the west side just to the east side to regain that 0% income tax. And then obviously land and homes are cheaper in Washington than here.
Right.
But I mean, we just had that one last week that was like, I'm tired of it. Every time I'm gone from vacation, I come back and there's a no homeless encampment on my property.
Yep.
Takes 2 days to get them out. And then I didn't tell you this, but they had filled up feces in Gatorade bottles and threw them on their porch while the house is in escrow.
So were they wide mouth Gatorade bottle? I'm just curious here. I'm trying to break down some of the
even if they were,
logistics
that'd be
of this.
difficult.
What does fentanyl do to the feces?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, they complained that fentanyl makes it so you can't poop. Yeah. So that's a big challenge. That's why a lot of times when you're going through withdrawals, for those that were ever curious about illicit fentanyl use, while you're going through withdrawals, sweating all over yourself, and the worst pain ever, you shit yourself. All over yourself. Flinging it like monkeys in the zoo, dude.
Oh my God.
100%.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that.
If that paints a really good picture of
sorry, I got
illicit,
sidetracked.
I didn't deal with much fentanyl. And
I didn't either.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah. I mean, it was mostly just
a timing
heroin.
thing.
Yeah. And meth.
Heroin and
meth.
Yep.
Heroin and meth. And
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah.
Just heroin and meth.
Oh, dude. There we go. I'll break down some stats for you from my former life, since you got me talking about it.
He loves talking about
There he
fentanyl.
goes.
No.
Got him.
No. It's Listen, the national average for an overdose death in our country, and those get misconstrued, like those numbers get manipulated all the time because these are ones that are confirmed. Synthetic opiate overdose, 1 in 3,300, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is by far the leading cause of death in adults age 18 to 45. Wow. It almost doubles traffic fatalities. Wow. Right? And then you get into the older ones where you have heart attack and stuff like that. But 1 in 3,350 is roughly the national average. What do you think it is in Spokane? Ooh. And Spokane's not Seattle or Tacoma.
Ooh.
What do you think?
I mean, half
one,
that?
1 in 2,000.
Really close. 1 in 2,200. And that's in Spokane, Washington, which is not a huge city, which isn't like LA or Seattle or Tacoma. What do you think it is in Coeur d'Alene?
Ooh, 1 in 5,000.
1 in 9,600.
Ooh, wow.
So in Kootenai County, what do you think? Well, Kootenai County's 1 in 6,800.
I was going to say it's got to be a little less.
Yeah. I mean, Kootenai County encompasses a much larger area, and it tends, some of the places that are a little bit less policed and stuff like that. And in all fairness, Coeur d'Alene has a higher medium house price, which still has an effect on crime.
Sure.
I mean, but that is also a really good representative. I don't know what it is in Seattle.
I mean, it's got to be worse, right?
Effing promise you it's higher than Spokane.
Yep.
I'll bet
I wonder
it's
what San Diego and Seattle are. Because San Diego's, when I was there doing a little 2-week thing, we had this called 2 for the Road. If you would wake them up from a heroin overdose, and you'd give them 2 more milligrams of
Narcan?
Yeah, Narcan, and then you'd send them on the way.
Yeah.
It's called 2 for the Road. I loved it.
That's amazing.
It was the best because you didn't overload hospitals.
Yeah.
And since you were right there by the border, it was such a horrible problem. And
how many, working down there, so Scott was a medic down that way. Working down there, how many times a day are you Narcan?
Oh, gosh.
Multiple?
Yeah. Well, not multiple a day, because I was a supervisor towards the end of the career, so I wasn't dealing with as much on hand. But, I mean, I did run all the raves down there, and Narcan we barely ever used because it was mostly mushrooms, coke.
Ecstasy.
Yeah, mostly ecstasy.
The old Molly.
The good old stuff.
Yeah, the
party drugs.
The uppers, yeah. And so,
I did talk to a LA City firefighter that tells me he uses it multiple times a day.
Well, with fentanyl, my first,
That's
I remember
insane.
my first fentanyl call was, he displayed every single symptom of a heroin overdose. And so we're like, okay, give him half. Nothing. Give him another half. Nothing. I mean, we were just trading vials. I think we went to 3.5 milligrams before they started breathing. And usually with traditional heroin, you'd get a half in or a 1 max, and then you just get him to breathing or get him awake or something like that. But yeah, we just kept pushing. We're like, he's still displaying symptoms of a heroin overdose, but we had never heard of the fentanyl hitting the streets. It's that much stronger, yeah.
It's worse now. It's in powder, and they cut it with xylazine, which is a veterinary tranquilizer. It's supposed to heighten the high, but it makes Narcan obsolete. We had an underage overdose, 10 doses, 10 of Narcan getting back by the time we got to the hospital.
Whoa.
It's wild, dude.
Yeah, and by the time, after 10 minutes, if not, I mean, you're not breathing. If you are,
you got a lot of other problems.
You're not exchanging much O2 in there, so yeah, you're gonna deal with some brain issues there.
Dang.
That's sad.
And the only reason I even bring that up, illicit drugs, and talking meth and fentanyl, man, is I just think it's an excellent barometer of what that society's going to look like as far as overall crime rate. And gosh, I don't want to make it seem like we're just bashing Washington. The statistics are bashing Washington. And I think what you have to analyze is what caused that in the first place. How do we keep that from happening here and in other states? Really, it's bashing the entire sentiment across our country that the way to address this is removing accountability. There has to be some accountability, individual and personal accountability. And that, as a parent, I don't care how good your kids are, there has to be some semblance of accountability and then holding them to that. The path through this is not decriminalizing everything so your statistics look better.
Yeah.
It's because obviously that didn't work. They blew through the ceiling of that even while trying to doctor statistics. I mean, it's bad. And we didn't even talk about Colorado, but they're in the same boat as Washington.
Yep, that's another one. What other big things do we need to hit on?
All right. Well, the capital gains increase tax. Okay. So they increased it 2.9% over 1.27 million. So capital gains on this, a lot of people relate it to real estate. There actually is no real estate capital gains tax in Washington. There's the excise tax, which we'll get into next, but the long-term capital gains tax for like stocks, bonds, stuff like that, they upped it from 7% to 2.9%. The first 270,000 are exempt for taxes.
So wait, they upped it to 7 to 9.9. Okay.
Yeah, on over 1.27, and then the estate tax is where it really kind of this was put in place for schools too. So to get more school money. So the estate tax.
So I can make my daughter a son.
Yeah, basically it went from 20 this is over if your estate's over 9 million, right? It goes from 20 to 35%. Of estate tax.
Wow. So
everything increased though, right? So $0 to 1 million went from, that one didn't change, from 10 to 10. 1 million to 2 million went up 1% to 15. 2 to 3 went up 2%. 3 to 4, 3%. It just keeps going up and up and up. And then you get to the 15% increase on 9 million on an estate tax, which everyone's like, oh, that's a lot of money. It's not hard. Well, look at real estate on the Bay in the Sound. If your estate's worth $2 million and you sell your $7 million house, you're at $9 million.
Right.
So
paying 30-something%.
Paying 35% just estate, and then
that is insane.
Yeah, if you put it to the government, the federal government, and the state government, you're at 61% total.
Think about that though. Like how unrealistic. There's people sitting out there. They're like, well, if you have over $9 million dues, pay your fair share. Well, what happens if these generational grandparents, great-grandparents bought this house on the Sound, busted their ass and started a business in the 80s? And they bought that house back when the lights were getting shut off in Seattle for $200,000, $150,000.
Yep.
Now that house is worth $7.5 million. They pass away. They want to leave their legacy behind, but oh no, they can't leave this house to their family anymore. Their family has to sell it in order to pay the government and the state taxes on money that was already taxed by way of income tax, property tax, sales tax. That enrages me more than anything.
Well, let's talk about the real estate excise tax then, if you want to. Because you gotta figure out the extra percentage. Anytime you sell any property in Washington, you have a real estate excise tax. It's not just for people that are living or moving outside the state. It's for people buying and selling within the state too. So there's some this form right here we'll put up, but basically for the first $525,000, you're taxed 1.6%. So and then 525 to 1.525 million is 1.78%. So if you sell a house for 700,000, the first 525 is taxed at 1.6. And then the residual is taxed at 1.78%. So,
and that just goes to
it's state and county. So, the state usually has a 0.5%. I'm sorry, municipality tax of 0.5. So the counties have a 0.5%. So, on a closing statement, when you sell a house, you'll see their state line and then you'll see a county line. And so, for example, on a $700,000 purchase, it's $11,300 you're paying just. So
only 0.5 of it goes to the county.
Yeah, 0.5 goes to the county, and then the 1.1 goes to the state. But what's crazy is a lot of people, when they want to sell their house, they forget about this if they've owned their house for a long time. If they've bought and sold in the last year and a half, you remember this because it's still going to burn a hole in your pocket. But for people that want to sell something and come over here, this is a dead set tax that you have to pay at every closing, not to mention the other fees associated with closing, escrow, real estate fees, all that stuff. Now you're losing another $11,000. So people who think they're coming into Idaho expecting to net a certain amount, it's good to sit down with your client and remind them and do even the calculation for them so they know if we sell for this is what you're going to be paying
right
at closing.
Here's your net sheet.
And there's still federal, oh my gosh, what's the word? Capital gains.
Capital gains, yeah.
And that's still there. There's just no state capital gains.
There's no state capital gains, yeah.
Well, that's nice of them.
Yeah, I know.
They get you everywhere else. I'm sure that's coming. That'll be next year. So yeah, there's a lot of costs.
It's funny because like when like good friends of ours, they moved here from Washington for the school stuff recently. They just couldn't stand it anymore. But they were like, oh yeah, we might sell and go get some acreage. I'm like, oh, let me know. Like, we can definitely help you. And he's like, yeah, but that stupid tax. I'm like, what tax? And he's like, the excise tax. I'm like, you're in Idaho, man. We don't have that anymore. And I was like, you don't have to worry about that. You sold your place in Washington. You don't have to worry about that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. The same folks that have come over from the west side, when they're talking about building, or they're going under contract with like a builder, they're like, well, is there anything that can come up? Like, how long before they can do the water survey, or how long before the EPA can do this analysis, or how long before they check it's wild.
What?
Oh yeah, anything over there. And of course, exorbitant fees in order to do that, which is just another form of taxation, as is vehicle registration. I mean, the creative ways that blue states find to pull more money away from their most valuable commodity and resource, which is its tax-paying citizens, blows my mind.
And their theory is, you should have a better way of life, right? But they don't.
Yes.
We have excellent quality of life in Idaho, and we don't have all of this crap.
No.
So that's clearly not working. Are they going to figure it out at some point? I don't understand.
When it's painful enough, when they lose enough contributing members of society.
Maybe they're getting there. I don't know.
Or when the federal government stops bailing out states that are still operating in the red. That's the craziest part. These extremely high tax burden citizens live in states that are in debt.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the only reason they are surviving is because of the ports.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, how would you, we don't have that issue here. How would you devil advocate that? What would they say about Idaho? What would the blue state say about Idaho? Well, you guys don't have X.
Racists.
Oh, after yeah.
You guys are racist.
That. Yeah.
Like social what? They would say we don't have homeless problems. Well, we don't have homeless problems because of our policies.
Well, based on our last video, we got a lot of pushback saying that it's because of our population, because our population is relatively low. But you can look at other places. New Mexico has the highest crime rate in the country. I'd love to pull up what their actual population is for that state, and then they'll say, well, it's close to the border, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
All right, Colorado, what's up?
Yep.
You know what I mean? That state, is very similar to Washington. It's policies.
Yeah, you can't tell me there's not a correlation between policies and all of the bad shit.
Yep.
You just can't tell me. The numbers are not telling me that.
And throwing money at it doesn't fix it.
No.
It absolutely does not fix it. This isn't an affordable housing problem. Homeless, extremely drug addicted individuals will still end up homeless and extremely drug addicted.
Right.
That there's a thing out there they did, like, gosh, it had to be 7-8 years ago, called Seattle is Dying, by I think it was Como News, but incredible hour-long documentary that talks. And what's cool about it is that was like 2014, 2015. So it was right after this huge transition. They called it out then. Said everybody down there is doing drugs. Everybody's a freaking intravenous needle user, and then fentanyl came along and completely changed the game. It's sad to see. Downtown Seattle used to be, it was the Emerald City, man. It was a cool place to go. Yeah. Pike Street Market was it was awesome.
When they used to throw the fish.
Yeah.
They don't do that anymore?
Well, the science said it's dangerous.
Yeah.
The science said it was.
Come on.
You gotta trust it, bro.
No, I think that brings up a good point of the gasoline tax. Like, I always think it's funny, like, okay, so on July 1st, the gasoline tax in Washington goes up 6 cents a gallon, right? What's funny is California did the same thing, right? But then what do they want everybody to do? Go electric. Mm-hmm. So now California is doing these pilot programs where they're doing mileage. So instead of a gas tax, which they ended up doing anyway, but they want to charge people per mile they drive. So it's funny because, we need to repair the roads, so let's increase it 6 cents per gallon every year. Oh yeah, never mind. No one's buying cars. They're buying electric cars. No more gasoline. Where's the money going to come from?
Right.
What's the next ruse, right? So now we go off a mileage thing. So people are like signing up to do these pilot programs to drive. Like, oh yeah, I'll get my $200 gas gift card to do a pilot program for the state. It's like, you're just walking into a trap here. Like, if I found out my friend was doing that, I'd be like, I'll pay you $250 not to do the program.
Yeah. It's like, how much of that money actually goes to whatever they're saying it goes to, right?
It doesn't go to
fraction. Clearly,
and citizens, they've already paid for the roads. Like, there's already taxes for it. But then I always love that with toll roads. And Illinois is probably the worst part. The East Coast is way worse with tolls.
Texas is ridiculous. ridiculous.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, what makes me crazy is, hey, we're gonna have a toll on this bridge because it wasn't in our budget, and there's a part of me as citizens like, all right, it's needed. That's not in the budget. Let's pay for it. But does the toll ever go away? No. They get so used to the. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They're gonna hang on to that. They're not gonna lose that.
We gotta repaint it. So
you're gonna get me going on something else. But stop calling taxes revenue. That's not the internal revenue system. That is a joke.
Yeah.
It's not a revenue service. What revenue are you generating? You're taking people's hard-earned money. Those people should get to decide where it goes. In every election, the biggest thing that we're arguing about is where my money's going to go and where my kids' money's going to go. 61% of my money, if I die, doesn't go to my kids. Man, F you.
Right.
There's no revenue you're generating. What service are you providing? Last I checked, it's shit. The service you're providing as a government entity or as a state government is shit. That's why you want my 2-part plan to fix the country. Here we go. This is my
lay it out, coach.
Yeah. No, but truly, man, if you are not
episode 2.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, dude, but it just anytime I think about it, because we get treated like just a resource to be exploited, and it pisses me off.
Yeah.
I think that you should have to be a citizen. You should have to be a contributing member to the system. We're voting for where our money's going. If you're not working and you're on a system, look, I'll freely admit when I first went back into the military and we had Trent, I was on WIC for 3 months. We were struggling, like struggle busting hard. We needed that for milk and eggs, and we fought like crazy to get off of it. I don't mind that those programs are out there to help pick people up, but they aren't intended to support you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And if you're living off one of those systems, I don't think you should be able to vote for where everybody else is who's putting into the system, where that money should go. Doesn't make you any less of an American. You're just not a contributor. Man, earn it back. That should be a freaking privilege. My other one is I don't think there should be any private campaign contributions when you get to a certain level of politics. Whatever your altruistic intentions were at the beginning, you spend your entire term in office paying back that return on investment. And that's why we end up with widespread corruption across both parties. As a citizen, I would rather say, oh, you're running for governor of Washington, Ferguson, and your competition, you're the primary, cool. Here's 500,000, here's 500,000, go run your campaign.
Yeah.
That to me makes sense, because I promise I'm gonna pay way effing more than that on the back end, so he can backdoor deal with a Department of Defense contract or whatever.
Yep.
It's, I don't know, sorry, get me going, but there's no, taxes aren't revenue, assholes.
I love when you get going. That was really well said. That was good information. I hope that you guys got something out of this. There were other laws we didn't get a chance to touch on, but we'll be back. We're going to have BZ on soon from North Idaho Arms. We're going to talk about gun laws because that's always a hot topic. And Washington's fucking that up too. So, but thank you guys. If you have questions, or I'm sure there are plenty of comments, whether hateful or not, we prefer not, but we get the hateful ones too. Please drop them down below. And make sure to like and subscribe. That keeps us able to do what we do here and get this information coming. Lots of great podcasts coming up. Be sure to listen to them on audio platforms too, Spotify and Apple iTunes and others, where you can get the non-censored version that you may have to get on YouTube.
Right. Yeah, we're still throwbacks. We welcome conversation, even if it's dissenting opinions. We can still do that, and I think we'll find ourselves a lot closer. Than maybe originally thought.
And I always feel the need to add this, that we love everybody, and we're not like far right-wing extremists by any means. We're just pretty common sense dudes that love our country, unapologetically American, and believe in freedom.
And want to leave a good one for this next generation.
Yeah, that's important, dude. All right, thank you all.
Yep.
Catch you
Cheers.
next time.